It is time once again to take a jump into another wave of Super 7 TMNT Ultimates. So we're taking a look at Wave 6 today, and this is the first wave that includes a 5th release, and it's also the wave that includes a figure that I have no experience with on the vintage side of things. We're taking a look today at Scratch, and I'm taking a look at him first because I'm just that excited. Normally I would start with the Turtle, but I've never gotten, I will never get, likely never going to get his vintage figure because it is so exceedingly expensive at this point that I've just long given up even caring about it. So it's really cool to finally get one. You know, this is a way to get him, and he'll look really great on the Ultimates display while still having that classic Playmates look. So we've got him here in our standard style packaging for the line, so that trapezoidal shape. He's got a purple slip cover because he is a bad guy. You've got his manhole cover on the front, the Turtles logo on the back. Of course, pop that slip cover off and you've got him there in all of his glory. He does come with a little buddy, so that kind of beefs him up already. We've got our sort of purple blue graffiti motif as far as the brickwork goes, and then the back it gives us a bio for our Crook Cat. So yeah, I'm really excited about this guy just because, you know, again, he's so expensive. I'm never going to get him, but I do have at least a version of him now. So let's do it. Let's pull him out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, our Super 7 Ultimates Scratch from Turtles Wave 6. And again, this guy represents something, I don't know if I want to say special, but kind of special to me, because I never had a Scratch. I'm never going to get a Scratch, but now I have a Scratch, and it may not be the original vintage, but it's close enough, right? So this guy represents a way for people to get a figure that is prohibitively, and I can't overstate that enough, prohibitively rare and prohibitively expensive in pretty much any condition. So it's pretty cool that they decided to get him out sooner rather than later, because Scratch came out in like 93, 94. So when a lot of people were kind of on the way out of Turtles and it became hard to get some of that stuff. So he's on the harder end of the spectrum to get, one of the really expensive, well-known figures. But we get him now, so pretty cool. He is fairly normal for the Ultimates line. He does have some odd limitations though, and we will be talking about this thing here in a minute too. Not really in a bad way, just more of a curious way. So he's got a head that can look up slightly. He can look down slightly. You've got a little bit of tilt side to side, full rotation. I wish he had a little bit more range in and out and up and down. Arms out at the shoulders. They swivel all the way around, of course. Get that tail out of the way. You've got your single jointed, it's about 90 degrees. That's about 90 degrees. Rotating elbow, you've got your hinges and a swivel at the wrist. I did mention in Wave 5 reviews that the wrists were hard to swap, or the hands were hard to swap rather, on some figures, Leo in particular. He does not have that problem here. If anything, all the joints are fine. Like, he is moving just like you would want him to. I'm not concerned about anything here so far. We've got a diaphragm cut that goes backwards, a decent bit. It goes forwards only slightly. Tilt a little bit, not too bad. And then it's also a rotation point too. I wish it had a little bit more forward and backward. Forward mostly. Then he also has a waist twist, which honestly I didn't even notice at first. I happened to move him and I realized that the waist went with him. If you're looking at him, it doesn't really look like there's anything there. The cut is very well hidden, so there's a full-on waist twist. We've got legs that go all the way out to the side. They go all the way forward. They go all the way backward. We've got our thigh cut up there. Single jointed knees, and these are super limited. I'm really not sure why. I feel like there's definitely room to maneuver here, but he just doesn't have any range. And you've got a twist there also. Now we've got asymmetrical legs, so we'll talk about both. He's got hinge forward and backward on those ankles. And then pretty good rocker for such a wide, fat boot foot, or whatever that is supposed to be. And then this leg goes back a little bit further, but it's still not great. It's not full 90, and then rotation. And then you've also got hinge here. He has a kind of a digitigrade type of foot. It's not really that, but it's close. And then you've got sort of a rocker, but it really feels more like rotation than anything else. It really kind of stays on the same plane, so it's pretty limited there also. And then we've got our tail, which is basically just a swivel. And it has a little bit of bobble because there's a ball peg under there, but the ball is actually part of the body. It's not something that pegs into the body, it's part of the body. So the tail kind of cups over it. So you have a little bit of shimmy in and out, but not much. It's mostly just a swivel. And then we have this. And while it's not, directly tied to articulation, you're going to be fighting this when you move him, and not in a sense that it's going to really cause a problem, but just to, mention it, this isn't removable. And I'm quite certain that at some point, maybe like at least in the renders, it looks like it's a plastic piece, but it's clearly a real metal chain here, which is always great to get a real metal chain. But this piece doesn't come off. This is sculpted onto his leg. This doesn't come off. The only way that I can think to get this off is to actually pry the ring apart with a pair of pliers. So when you move him, you're going to have to also be dealing with this unless you actually want to take it off. I mean, I'm never going to remove it because it's part of his character, but at the same time, it is, at least at a base level, a little bit cumbersome. Now, visually, I think they pretty much nailed him, and while I don't have one that I'm going to compare against, obviously, I've seen the damn thing so many times that I know exactly what he looks like, and this is a pretty faithful recreation of Scratch. I'm really happy with the amount of paint on this figure, in particular, because really, he's pretty much covered in it from head to toe, because there's so many different layers and colors that sort of stack on top of each other. The big thing, of course, is his very stereotypical, classic prisoner uniform, and of course it's all in tatters, so you've got all of the holes and all of the cuts and the gouges through it, the back ripped off, the shoulder missing, he's got the big cut on his torso here, he's got the scratches on his leg, and then of course you've got all of this black and white piping basically down it, and it's all really clean, really crisp, no fuzzy line work, no kind of bleeding edges. It's all just sort of where it needs to be. And I'm really happy with the fur as well, because it's all sculpted, of course, so the figure, in terms of that fur sort of, pieces and patches that you see, it's all textured, so it's all got that sort of fur gouging in it, so it looks, when it hits the light, like it's actually fur. But then there's also this sort of chocolate brown color that's on it with a different lighter brown that's in there, and you've got various levels of brown to sort of help shade him, which works really well, especially on the neck and the upper chest. So you've got that sort of tan color and then another brown wash on top of it. We've got stuff, like the 0009, so of course the 9 lives of a cat, you've got that on his chest. We've got the tatters on the tail, we've got the bandage over here, and it just looks really good. I mean, it looks like a really goofy, cartoony, very like Looney Tunes-esque almost style of character. He's always been kind of a weird thing in the confines of Turtles to me. He never really seemed like he fit very well, which is ridiculous when you think about the fact that literally anything and everything has been crammed into Turtles in one way or another. But he always kind of stood out as an odd one. So I'm pretty happy to finally, get my hands on one and just really play around with it. But I'm really liking this figure. I'm liking the overall design. He's going to stand out on the shelf because he really is very, very different. Of course, he's a cat, but he's also in this very striking black and white getup. You've got the asymmetrical design with the feet. Of course, we do have this manacle down here, which I really like this, but again, I'm going to kind of harp on it again. I really wish this was removable. Like, I just don't see a way that, I don't know that there's any way you can possibly get this off without prying apart one of those rings. And while that's not the most difficult task, I don't really want to have to do that either. I'm never going to, because it's part of his character and it's part of the story here. It's part of the design. But it feels like it should be removable if you wanted to actually have him get free. So he's got this big ball hanging back all the time, which works really well if you're trying to get him, escaping from the turtles or something like that. So it's cool, but it's kind of a double-edged sword because it's always on there. I mean, it's definitely multiple parts. Like this ball is 2 parts, but it's, it's like welded shut, so you're not going to get it off there. This is all 1 part, so this thing was actually put on after it was completed, and this manacle is part of the leg, so it's not coming off either. It's not, it's not the biggest deal. It's certainly not the end of the world or going to ruin my enjoyment of the figure. I am just curious on the design direction there. And then ultimately, we have this head sculpt up here, which really does have a lot of character. He's always looked like this really like tweaked out sort of goofy cat, and it comes through pretty well with this super toothy smile and his big sort of lopsided eyes, because you've got one that's open more than the other, and he's got the sort of, bandit mask on him almost, which just adds to his whole crook aesthetic. The teeth are really, really white, and they've got super, super clean paint lines in there. I'm pretty happy with those, although there is this odd tooth right here that I'm not sure if it should have a line or not. His right canine should have a line under there or not, because the left one does. It's kind of odd. I'm wondering why it doesn't. I don't know if that's mine or if it's going to be like that for everybody or not, but who knows? It's kind of neither here nor there. It's not a big deal for me. It just sort of stuck out. And then, of course, you've got your hat up here at the top. He's got the, the tied bandana on the back. We've got our file necklace, which I think is a great touch. Very classic crook kind of thing to get a file to kind of whittle your way out of a prison cell. So he's a pretty cool looking figure. I mean, the only thing that I truly I truly am not over the moon about, I suppose, is the ball and chain, and it's mostly a two-sided thing. I like the idea behind it. It works really well. I like that it's a real metal chain, but I'd also like to be able to take it off too. Otherwise, though, I think he looks pretty solid. I'm really happy with him overall. Very clean, very, very nice looking figure. Now, as far as accessories goes, we get a pretty solid spread here for Scratch. He has all of the hallmarks of the vintage figure with a little bit extra and everything sort of, ratcheted up a bit. So to start with, we get an extra head sculpt, and I really, really like this one. It might be a little bit more difficult to use than most because it's very specific. He's looking off to his right, so you can use it when he's like peeking around a corner or trying to sneak away from the turtles or something like that. But I really like those eyes. They're super expressive, and I really like that the mouth is asymmetrical. So you've got one side closed and one side open there. Very, very happy with that. We get some extra hands, and there's something weird about the hands here. Maybe it's just mine. I'm not really sure. So in the box, he had a right gripping and a left trigger finger, and then I got another set of trigger finger hands. So this is a right trigger finger, but this basically looks to be like another left trigger finger, but it's not exactly the same because the fingers are closed. They're not as open on these, so that's kind of interesting. We get a set of fists, and he gets a set of style pose hands, like, clawing, slashing kind of hands. So he's got a good array of hands. We get his weapons as well. We get the hammer and the file. So, of course, very, escape artist kind of tools where he's getting out of prison. We get the fish club. This was something he had in the vintage line. It's just a fish, a dead fish really is all it is. We get the money bag. So it's got the big dollar sign on the front. You got all these gold coins coming out the back. Depending on how you get him to hold it, it'll look like a normal bag where it's, not flat on the bottom, but it's also meant to be able to be put on the floor. So it's got a couple of usages there. And then we get my favorite Scratch accessory. We get the cake gun, because this is definitely like an homage to that, sort of goofy stereotype of you'd get a weapon smuggled in a cake. Looney Tune style or something like that. So it's a piece of cake with a gun in it. It's literally just a gun with cake around it. And I think it's absurd and stupid and ridiculous, but awesome as well. So this is really cool. I'm very happy that this was here. This is, of course, a vintage accessory also. And then we get his little buddy. And this is just like a slug figure. He doesn't really do anything. There's no articulation on him. Nothing moves. So he's just sort of sitting there, standing, flipping his coin. This is Jailbird. And he's just sort of standing there, hanging out. He's one of the gang in prison. So I'm happy to see this guy. Any figure, I'm going to say it with this one, just like any other Turtles figure we ever get, any figure that has a buddy is instantly going to be cooler to me, and that holds true here. He's probably not my favorite that we've gotten so far, but he's got his own little bit of attitude, so I'm very happy with that. And then we also get a weapons rack for this one as well, and this figure did not have a weapons rack in the vintage line, but all of his weapons were yellow, and that's what this is for. Then they used the ball and chain as the method to tie it all together. So we've got the cake gun, we've got the fish club, the file, and the hammer ensnared in the ball and chain. So I do really like that. It looks really good. So again, another little small nod to that vintage figure. So he's got a lot of stuff, a lot of weird stuff too, but it very much all works for the theme of this figure. So yeah, overall, I'm really happy with this figure. Again, a lot of this figure for me is just the chance to own one. It's a really big part of this figure is that I know myself, like a lot of other people out there, aren't going to get a Scratch anytime soon or ever possibly because of how rare it is and how expensive it is. I'm never going to pay that for a Scratch. I don't care that much. But it's nice to be able to get this figure in this line to represent that version at a larger scale with more articulation, with more detail, with more stuff. And he turned out really nice. I'm really happy with this figure overall. I only have a few small gripes, I think. The knees definitely need a little bit more range, but it's still workable. And then the ball and chain, again, it's not the end of the world, but it is kind of cumbersome. You just have to work around it. It's going to be on him at all times unless you want to go to the trouble of prying apart one of those rings to take that off. Otherwise, I think he's a pretty solid figure. He looks great. He has some really goofy accessories. And again, he's got a buddy, and that always adds to the cool factor for any Turtles figure. I don't make the rules. That's just the way it goes. So that's going to do it for this look at the Super 7 Ultimates TMNT Wave 6 Scratch. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And until next time.